As we look toward 2024, a new Quinnipiac poll reveals that most Florida voters don't want their governor, Ron DeSantis, to run for president. According to the poll, 59% of surveyed voters said they would prefer he sit the race out. By party, 96% of Democrats, 24% of Republicans, and 61% of independents opposed a DeSantis run. Joining us now to discuss is culture editor at The Federalist, Emily Jashinsky. Welcome, Emily.
Hey guys, long time no see.
What do you think of this? What do you make of the poll?
Yeah, I mean, if I were a Florida voter, I don't think I would want Ron DeSantis to run for president either because he's doing a good job as governor. I mean, I think that's the question is, you have to parse out how many people just want him to stay as governor and how many people actually want him to run for president. And so that's what this poll doesn't get at. His numbers have fluctuated. His approval numbers have fluctuated as the conversation around coronavirus and the Delta variant has fluctuated. So some of that's understandable, but I think that's the number that really matters a lot more is what his approval rating is in Florida. And we have seen it fluctuate. So that's sort of where I'm coming from on this.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Emily. And one thing I've kind of found talking to folks, I spent a lot of time in Florida. Honestly, if I could live there, I would. He's very, very popular. And what I found in Republican circles is it feels like people see him as he offers a lot of what Trump did while being not quite Trump in some of the regards that people would have preferred he not be like Trump. The numbers seem to break down in a way that the majority of Republicans would still be okay with him running for governor. What do you make of that? Would you consider him a top tier candidate if he were to run?
Yeah, he's absolutely a top tier candidate. And I would say what you just described is totally accurate. But it doesn't, like, this entire Republican primary could go up in flames in a second. As soon as Donald Trump says that he's running for president, it's over. It's going to be like Donald Trump and Joe Walsh, and we're going to have to sit through some sort of debate on PBS about that. So this could all be for naught. It could matter not one bit. But Ron DeSantis does have that dynamic down. He strikes that balance better than literally anybody else. And this makes it sound right now like I'm pumping up DeSantis. I don't really care, but I think it is a good descriptor of him that, like, he does go for the media. He goes for the establishment, even though he kind of is the establishment at this point. But he does it without the constant barrage of bizarre tweets, which are also, I guess, from Trump's perspective, kind of funny. But so he doesn't have the comedy value that Donald Trump has. I guess that's a loss.
No doubt. That is a huge loss. It's the one saving grace. How much of this do you think is going to be mooted? In other words, how close to 100% do you think that a Trump campaign actually is?
Yeah, that's really the question. I mean, I would put it right now, and Alyssa would probably know better than me, I would probably put it at like 60%. I mean, I think he says he's very serious about it, and everyone he talks to seems to think that he's very serious about it. But that could also be a very Trumpian posture, right? To continue changing the Republican Party and exerting power over the Republican Party, which is obviously something that Donald Trump enjoys immensely. You can see where he would continue to float that in a very serious way to everybody he talks to, without a wink and a nod, because that's the source of the power. So it's really difficult, I think, to say, but given what people around him given how people around him are talking, I'd say it's probably 60% right now.
I'd agree with that, and I also don't think he actually knows for sure what he wants to do. It's still a ways out, but I think to your point, Emily, he's going to milk it for all it's worth and kind of convey that he's thinking about running till the 11th hour so that even if he doesn't, he could sort of be a kingmaker of sorts or spoiler, if you want to look at it that way, for other candidates. It's a matter of he's going to stay relevant. He wants to stay powerful within the party. He wants to be the most important endorsement if he himself ultimately decides not to run. But I guarantee he's going to go through 20 different decisions in his mind before it's time to file as to whether he's running or not. But I think there's a lot of folks around him saying, absolutely, get in, you're going to win. They also have a penny to make off of him.
Yeah, where's the 40% come from? Like, what's the downside for him?
I think the downside is enormous. I mean, it would be I don't know exactly how old he'll be at that point, but he'll definitely be up there, and that would be 4 years, a 4-year extension. And it would almost certainly invite more lawsuits and scrutiny of his business practices and of his family. And he's already dealing with a whole lot of that. So I don't know if you want to go through a second round of it. I mean, it was basically impossible for him to govern for 4 years because of these like constant, legal inquiries. So I don't see a lot of upside. Of course, I wouldn't ever want to be president of the United States, so it's hard for me to answer the 4% question, period. But I think from his perspective, there is definitely a downside legally, logistically. So I don't know. At the same time, though, if you want power and if you enjoy sort of role playing in the office, as I think he does, he picked Mike Pence because he reportedly said that man looks like a vice president. I think Donald Trump enjoys, playing the role of president. So, but at the same time, I don't know why anybody would want to put their family through that again.
I'm curious if you think.
Oh, sorry. He'll be 78 years old.
Donald Trump's well-known concern for his family. Yes.
Yeah, he's going to live to like over 100, so I don't think his age really matters to him. I think we're stuck with Trump for a very long time. I'm curious, Emily, if you think this 96? Yeah, 96% of Democrats who said they don't want Ron DeSantis to run. I'm curious how much of that do you think is because they think he's a formidable opponent versus just like, we don't like him, so we don't want him to run. Do you think that they're thinking, well, because he might actually win?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because the reason I said earlier that, if you're a run-of-the-mill Republican voter, of which there are many in Florida, then Ron DeSantis, by all metrics, is doing a great job for your cause and for what you believe in. And so that's why I think he's become this flashpoint in the culture war. And partially that's because he invites it and he's eager for that and he wants it. But that makes him bitterly unpopular with the Democrats. And so it could be, Kim, to your point, that he actually just strikes this very visceral chord with Democrats in the state, and they just despise him. And it's just like, oh, no, no, no. But I do think people definitely realize that DeSantis has emerged as a top tier candidate because of all of the media coverage. The entire thing that happened with 60 Minutes last spring, where they were basically caught lying about him, he emerged looking pretty good from that. And he handles these things pretty well. So I think it's a combination. I would imagine it's a combination of both, but that's a great question.
He also doesn't have one of the big downsides that Democrats are able to use against Trump, and I think that's on climate. And I don't think they can attack DeSantis as easily on climate because he's actually from what I understand, he's fairly proactive on it when it comes to Florida, since Florida is sinking. So
I think he reads a lot of Ryan Grimm.
Yeah, he's just watching a lot of radars, and he's really gotten religion on it. And also, he looked around and he's like, oh, this state's going to be uninhabitable in the near future, like my lifetime, if we don't do something about this.
Yeah, totally. And I agree, Kim. I think that's a great point. And I mean, that has never mattered in Republican primaries, and it will continue to not matter in Republican primaries in 2024. But I do think when you really sort of dig into him and look at him on paper, he does have a lot of the variables that would make for arguably the most formidable candidate, depending on who is running on the Democratic ticket in 2024.
Yeah.
Well, Emily Jashinsky, great to have you back here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll have more Rising for you right after this.